The hum of military trucks could be heard in the distance early in the morning. "Queen Asa! Queen Asa! They're approaching!" a voice called out from one of the scouts who had been keeping watch for the hunters. Asa took a deep breath and nodded to the merfolk general. This was it. It had been a long night, but her people's spirits remained strong. Queen Asa raised her hand, and there was silence. "Snake people and merfolk," she began, looking into the eyes of her warriors, who listened intently. Only the drops of water could be heard dripping from the tunnel ceiling. "This is not my first battle, it is my second. I have traveled through space and time to be here, to stand shoulder to shoulder with you and fight. The hunters have once again brought war to our doorstep, and we welcome it with claws, fins, and fangs." A murmur of agreement spread through the crowd, and Asa continued with more passion, her voice growing stronger. "Today, we fight for our families, for our lost ones, for our freedom. We fight for the blood in our veins and the breath in our lungs. We fight not only for our future, but for our right to exist. We have made this place our home, and no one will take it from us. We are not afraid of their weapons or their numbers. We have faced the darkness before, and we will face it again. With every strike, every bite, every wave of our tails, we show them that we are not prey. We are the predators." The crowd roared, their voices echoing through the tunnels like a storm. Asa raised her hand, and silence fell again. "Today we make our stand. Today we remind the hunters of the fear they have forgotten." The warriors around her erupted in cheers. "To victory!" she shouted, and her people echoed her cry, ready for the battle that was to come. You are watching the Tales of the Savannah. Subscribe and be part of the tribe. Now let's get back to the story. Django's big boot hit the pavement with a heavy thud as he stepped out of the military vehicle. He took a deep breath and could smell them, the snake people, in the air. His eyes glowed as he took in the scene around him. "Where is that boy?" he thought, scanning the crowd. He spotted Kwame standing next to Nala. "Kwame, you hunt with me. Nala, you're with Samuel," he commanded. "Yes, sir," Nala replied, though a protest sat on the tip of her tongue. But her hunter's instincts took over, her focus now sharp. She saw nothing but the hunt ahead. Kwame glanced at Nala. Her eyes were now glowing slightly, a simmering rage visible, and he heard a faint growl emanating from her. As more hunters gathered, the growl grew louder. Kwame wondered if his own eyes were glowing too. He had an urge to check his reflection in the truck mirrors, but Django's intense stare kept him rooted in place. Cabo stepped closer, whispering, "Brother, what's the holdup?" "Are you nervous?" "I understand. I can lead us this time. No one would blame you." He chuckled low, almost taunting. Django looked at Nandi, her face fierce and ready for war. Ignoring Cabo, Django lifted his hand, and immediately the humming of the hunters stopped. They waited, their faces hard and focused, ready for his next command. Django looked deep into the eyes of his brothers and sisters. "My people," he began, his voice firm and commanding, "this is our divine assignment. We were created to eradicate the snake people, a duty we take seriously. These creatures are a threat to humans, and it is our responsibility to protect the inhabitants of Earth. Do not let your guard down, brothers and sisters. They are still dangerous." He paused, his eyes scanning their faces. "Our brother Samuel did not sleep last night. He cooked up a special potion to increase the potency of their venom. With this liquid dipped onto the tips of your arrows, we have something truly special, something akin to the smoke balls we used at Snake Island." The hunters nodded, gripping their weapons tighter. "Now, brothers and sisters, we march forward as our ancestors did before us. Victory is ours. The goddess is with us," Django shouted, lifting his arrow high into the air. A roar erupted from the hunters, their voices fierce and filled with the promise of blood. The time for battle had come, and the hunters, armed with their enhanced arrows, were ready to face the darkness that awaited them below. Before leading his team into the tunnels, Django lifted his eyes to the sky. Dark clouds were gathering, twisting like a bad omen. He turned to Kwame and murmured, "I thought it was a clear day today." In the distance, he could hear Nandi giving her team instructions. "May the goddess protect you, my love," he whispered under his breath. The tunnels were dark, But the hunters, with their glowing eyes, could see clearly. There were over 20 strategic entry points, and Django had carefully assigned teams and leaders to each one. The snake people have nowhere to run, he thought. Once inside, the hunters separated, spreading out through the maze of tunnels. Django signaled for Nala, Samuel, and a small group to take one sub-tunnel while he, Kwame, and another group took another. The hunters moved in silence, their footsteps almost soundless. Django led the way, sensing the snake people lurking just beyond his vision. Suddenly, a faint whisper of movement reached his ear. He raised his hand, and the hunters froze, their weapons ready, eyes scanning the darkness. Kwame, a seasoned soldier from a young age, felt out of his depth. Ever since he had encountered that snake on the street, something inside him had changed. In truth, he was not only terrified, but also felt an emotion he couldn't quite place. Then, from the depths of the tunnel, a low hiss slithered through the air, followed by a faint rustle, like scales sliding over stone. Kwame's heart pounded in his chest, adrenaline surging through his veins. Django signaled his team to spread out, forming a wide arc. The snake people moved like shadows, their movements fluid and silent. Their eyes glinted in the dark, catching the faint light like distant stars. In the command center, Asa coordinated the attack. Hold B5, wait for them to get closer. F2, stand by. Z6, circle back to A2. Her voice was calm and controlled, like a chess master playing her pieces. She knew the tunnels better than the hunters. This was her game. Stay close, Django whispered, his voice barely audible. A sudden noise, like a sharp crack, echoed through the tunnel. A scream tore through the air as one of the snake people fell. An arrow lodged deep in their side. Asa's heart hammered in her chest. The hunters had made contact. Arrows started flying through the darkness, deadly and precise. The snake people scattered, their movements frantic and desperate. But the hunters were relentless, advancing with every step, their eyes glowing with the thrill of the hunt. Django's heart raced as he pushed forward, each step bringing him closer to his prey. He could taste the fear in the air, but beneath that fear was something else, something dark and powerful, waiting to strike back. The hunt had only just begun. Explosions echoed throughout the tunnels, shaking the very walls. In some parts, the tunnels had fallen silent. No response came from them. The screams of both snake people and hunters filled the air, mixing with the sound of crumbling stone. "Asa!" A choked voice crackled through the radio. "Stay away from the arrows, they have poison." Then, the line went dead. "B3, come in." "B3, Asa called, panic creeping into her voice. "I must go out there and fight with my people," she cried out, her heart racing. "No, Asa," Amina replied firmly. "The biggest fight is here." Django, hidden nearby, could hear the frantic radio calls. He signaled his group to be silent, spreading them further into sub-tunnels. There was no telling where the voices were coming from. He signaled for Kwame to follow. Asa sensed the hunters closing in. Her hands trembled as she gave her final command over the radio. "Pull the plug." Suddenly, she could hear Tina fighting outside the entrance to the command center. Screeches, hisses, and the sound of arrows whizzing by filled the air. In the midst of the chaos, Django glanced around, searching for Kwame. He wasn't in sight, but there was no time to think about it. Tina lifted her head, and Django saw the opportunity and shot an arrow straight at her. Asa watched in horror as Tina began convulsing, the poison working through her body until she lay still on the ground. It all happened so quickly. Whatever poison this was, it was unlike anything she had ever encountered. Asa's heart tightened with grief, but there was no time for emotion. She turned her gaze to Django, who was staring back at her, fear visible in his eyes. Was he seeing the prophecy before him? It couldn't be, he thought. Without hesitation, Asa transformed into the two-headed snake of legends. Django's eyes widened in awe, but he quickly composed himself, readying his bow. He aimed, but Asa's tail lashed out, knocking the bow from his hands. He unsheathed his sword. They circled each other, predator and hunter, neither willing to back down. Meanwhile, Kwame clung to the wall of the tunnel, vomiting violently. He could hear the sounds of Django fighting, but his legs felt like jelly. His body was weak, trembling. "I have to help Django," he thought, wiping his mouth with a shaky hand. Like a drunk man, he stumbled toward the sound of the battle. Then, a deep rumble like thunder rolled through the tunnels. Something big was coming. When Kwame finally reached the place where Asa and Django were fighting, he saw Django flying through the air, hitting the wall with his back. Asa turned her attention to Kwame, inching closer, ready to strike. But suddenly Kwame let out a scream, his bones cracking, his body convulsing. Amina watched from a distance, recognizing what was happening. She had gone through the same transformation. Kwame's screams filled the tunnel, so loud they woke Django from his brief unconsciousness. Django blinked, unsure if he was awake or dreaming. "We have to go, Asa." "The water is getting closer," Amina shouted. "What about him?" Asa asked, glancing at Kwame. "We take him with us," Amina insisted. Within seconds, the two-headed snake and Kwame had disappeared into the shadows. Django opened his eyes wide, hearing the roar of the water crashing through the tunnels, coming toward him with terrifying speed. He braced himself, ready for impact. "Goddess, I commit my soul into your hands," he whispered, surrendering to the inevitable. The tunnels flooded violently, water surging with unstoppable force. The merfolk, now in their element, moved swiftly, slaughtering the hunters just as they had done at Snake Island. "Get out of the tunnels! Retreat! Go back!" Screams echoed, desperate and filled with terror. The merfolk moved like shadows in the water, cutting down everything in their path with incredible speed. Outside, the hunters who managed to escape stood in shock, some coughing up water. "Django! Django!" Nandi shouted, searching frantically among the survivors. "Have you seen Django?" she asked, her voice breaking. Tears welled in her eyes as she realized her husband was nowhere to be found. Fear gripped her heart as she braced for the worst. Meanwhile, Asa burst out of the tunnel with great speed, the violent waters missing her by an inch. She could still hear the sirens' song, their voices manipulating the water, flooding the tunnels with their magic. There was no question who had won this battle. Asa looked down at the man at her feet, still violently shaking. "Polisa," she murmured, a flicker of recognition crossing her mind. Could it be? Asa called out with a sense of urgency, her voice commanding, "Summon the healers immediately." She turned back to her people, their numbers still strong, their spirits unbroken. They began to gather around her, clapping their hands in triumph. "We did it," Amina whispered with a smile. Asa nodded, a soft smile forming on her lips. "We thank the goddess," she said, her voice filled with gratitude. As the waters receded and the siren's song faded, Asa knew they had won more than a battle. They had secured their place in history. This was a clear message to the hunters. The snake people were no longer prey. They were now the hunters. Dear tribe members, we've reached the end of another episode in our Snake Island series. Were your predictions spot on? I'd love to hear your thoughts. When I first wrote the story of Amina, the snake girl, I never imagined we would now be 9 stories deep, venturing into the heavens and expanding on the characters we grew to love in the first season. Your encouragement and support have been invaluable as we continue to imagine and reimagine this world we've created together. Thank you for being a part of this journey. What's next for the snake people, you ask? Well, we'll just have to wait and see. And as always, thank you for watching our story, and we hope you enjoyed it. What lessons did you draw from this story? Share your thoughts with us in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and be part of the tribe. Thank you for watching The Tales of the Savannah. We will see you next time in the Savannah.